All right, guys, week whatever of coronavirus. I barely even know what day it is, but I just wanted to give an update and just sort of provide an insight into what just happened to me at Whole Foods and why I think this is growing increasingly problematic, just the measures that are being taken in regards to the coronavirus stipulations. Okay, so just a bit of background first and foremost. Right off of the bat, you all that have been following me know that I have been saying that there is something weird about this COVID-19. And it was just really my gut instincts off the bat that led me to believe that the rhetoric was not adding up. I travel, for those of you that don't know, I travel up to 5 days a week. On a slow week, I travel 3 days a week, but usually 5 days a week is regular for me, all around the nation, doing events, shaking hands. I basically live in an airport, have an insane amount of miles that I hope I will be able to use one day. So when the coronavirus outbreak happened, outbreak meaning the media outbreak, when people started increasing the rhetoric and saying that they were going to start shutting down cities, I was on the road. I was in Florida for my Blexit event, and I had a full week ahead of me of more events in 2 events in California, 1 event in Houston, and 1 event in Northern California. So I did not cancel any of my events because I instantly calculated and I said, if what they are saying is true, if this virus is so virulent that it can jump 6 feet, if the virus can be transmitted ocularly, they were saying that you could get it could live on surfaces for hours and hours after it was touched. I just accepted my doom. I figured I either A, already had it, or B, was going to get it, because if you travel like me, there's no way not to get it. If you meet as many people as I do and shake as many hands as I do, you just have to accept your fate. But, in my gut, I did not exactly think that this was going to be the thing that took out humanity. Maybe it's because we are promised an apocalypse once a month. Climate change, Soleimani was supposed to be World War III. The internet was supposed to be over with the, I forgot what those restrictions were that they said the internet will never be the same, and then everything was fine. And I just felt like this was going to be one of those things that was really hyped up and did not measure up to what all of the media members were saying. Again, actually, let me just foremost shout out the media members that have been calm in their rhetoric. Laura Ingraham has been asking the right questions from the beginning. Sean Hannity has been asking the right questions from the beginning. Rush Limbaugh has been asking the right questions from the beginning, as has Tucker Carlson, not in the beginning, but he's now starting to say that some of these lockdowns and procedures that are growing increasingly more tyrannical are not making much sense. And if you have not just sort of looked around and said, this is weird, you might be a person that can be easily led on by the media, or you must be very invested in the media and watching a lot of hours of it, because this is just not making sense. We were told that it was going to grow exponentially, and at the time that they first started telling us these predictions, nobody had changed their habits. In a nation of 330 million people, it is impossible to get everybody to change their habits. For those of you that are Game of Thrones fans like I am, there's a scene in the last season where Jon Snow and Daenerys Targaryen literally have to bring the zombies, they're not zombies, but the walkers, to the feet of Cersei Lannister, because they know that unless she sees the dead thing in front of her coming to life, she's not going to believe what lays beyond the wall. That's a great illustration of just regular human behavior. Most people, no matter how much you tell them that something's going to be bad, they're not going to actually edit their behaviors until death is on their front step. We were told that that was going to happen within a span of 2 weeks, and then it was going to be exponentially, and that millions were going to die. As of today, 23,000 have died, and some people never edited their behaviors. So I looked around instantly, and I saw that the spring breakers still went on spring break. You'll recall all of those high school kids and college kids on the news saying that they weren't going to give up their spring break, that they only live once, a very young mentality. In DC, which is where I live, They shut down, even though they shut down the universities, we were actually one of the last cities to adopt the shut down the restaurants and shut down the bars. So we had for weeks people that, because they were not working, were day drinking, were spilling out of bars, just a ton of people together celebrating because they had work off, not because they were fearful of coronavirus. I happened to go to the Columbia Heights to get my hair done. The Dominicans were all partying in their neighborhood. Like, I get my hair done by the Dominicans. And so I just did a common sense calculation and said, if this thing is as bad as they say it is, DC is going to get hit really hard in a couple of weeks because nobody's paying attention and nobody cares. But again, my gut, I said, I'm not going to wear a mask. I'm not going to change my behaviors because if nothing else, I'm a believer that if 95% of people are fine after they get it, it's probably best to get the virus and be done with it. I probably have already had the virus, just considering how much I travel, because it's being exposed to germs is actually a good thing. Obviously, we know how this ends. The numbers just didn't match. And this is the most interesting number to me in all of this. So we, again, a nation of 330 million plus people. We have 23,000 deaths. Out of those 23,000 deaths, over 10,000 of them are in New York City. That's strange. There's a lot of people that don't live in New York City, a lot of people that have been partying, a lot of kids that went on spring break. Why are almost half of the deaths concentrated in New York City? I get that New York City is a busy city. I lived there for 8 years. I was born in New York. But I can tell you that more than 1 million people fled immediately as soon as this outbreak happened and the doom and gloom predictions came. They went to their summer homes, they went to their friends' homes, they went to their family homes. Manhattan is really a city of transplants. People that actually live in Manhattan and grew up in Manhattan, almost all of them have houses somewhere else because it's an incredibly expensive city to live in. So we know that Manhattan people pretty much fled, yet almost half of all of the deaths that we have in this country are concentrated to a city that, even when everybody is in the city, has about 7.5 million people. So that is already sort of remarkable, right? Well, shouldn't there be, there's a dense city. What about, San Francisco? What about Chicago and all of these other cities? Why aren't we seeing that same level of an outbreak happening? So I said, again, let me just pay attention to DC. Let me look at my eyes. I'm one of those people that believes that in many cases, as society becomes more and more technologically advanced, we've abandoned our gut instinct and our instincts in general. We rely on the media to tell us how we should feel, as opposed to just kind of going outside and seeing if things are real. It was the same thing in terms of police brutality. We saw the media every day say that there was this epidemic of Black men getting shot. If you were a Black American in 2016, you would have been scared to see a police officer because we really thought it was an epidemic. But again, me relying on my instincts didn't really add up to my experiences with police officers over the year. Went and looked at the statistics, and the statistics didn't match the hype. And it turned out that in all of 2016, just 16 unarmed Black men were shot and killed by police officers, and police officers were 18.5 times more likely to get shot by a Black man than the other way around, and that more white men were shot and killed unarmed by police officers that year, as were more Hispanic men. So that instinct that I have, I tend to follow it and not really invest so much in the media hype, especially when it seems like it's the same media members that are hyping it that have been hyping every other promised apocalypse. As I mentioned earlier, net neutrality. When you see those same players in place, you should just, put your antennas up, not tinfoil hats, but antennas, to just say, all right, well, it should be very soon for us to see these outbreaks. Of course, it hasn't happened. DC is a particularly interesting area because today, as of today, there have been 69 COVID-19 deaths. 69. That is it. Of all of this year in Washington, D.C., a city of many transplants, a city of people that are passing in and out all the time because we've got Congress and politicians, and they're always on the road. You would just think that this would be a bigger hub. We have had no instances of the hospitals being overwhelmed. 69 deaths, that's really low. Way more people have died of the flu, okay? So let me give you just Whole Foods, what happened. the first couple of weeks, Whole Foods was open for business. The next week, they instituted putting down these pads that said, please keep your social distance. So when you were in the market, you had to have when you were in line to pay at checkout, you had to keep a distance of 6 feet. Remember, it spread 6 feet from individuals. And I thought, okay, still not making much sense to me, but we're all walking around the market, but apparently once we're in line, we need to be 6 feet apart. Then the following week, they upped it again. And I'm one of those people that recycles bags at Whole Foods. And they had a new policy, which went into effect last week, which said that we had to pack our own bags. Made very little sense because I actually was then closer to the person that was working at Whole Foods because I had to be next to the bags in order to pack it and next to the products. But again, none of these increasingly erratic policies need to make sense. They just need to do something so that the people who are under tinfoil hats, people that do think that we're going to lose millions of Americans to this, feel comfortable because action is being taken, even if that action makes absolutely no sense. So today, mind you, I'm one of those people that goes to Whole Foods every other day. Sometimes every day. Might sound a little excessive, but I live very close to Whole Foods and I like to buy meat fresh and I love to cook. So I just will get inspired walking down the aisles deciding what I want to get. I did no hoarding. I don't do mass buying ever. I buy what I need. And I have just lived my life normally and bought what was needed for 1 night, 2 nights, and then gone back when I decided what I wanted to eat the next day. That is just how I live. I am not a panicked person about this. I was surprised today to see that which they already had the measure of making us wait outside. That was another step they took, where they have blue lines outside where everyone has to be apart 6 feet, or else you can't even enter the store, and they count how many people in, how many people out, because they want even more distance. Today I go in, and there's a police officer at the front, and she looks extremely frustrated to even be there. It's not a good use of police officers' time, and I do feel bad for them. So this video is not at all a shot at police officers. I know we're seeing so many of these videos of them showing up at 1-year-old parties or showing up at grocery stores, but this is what they're being told to do. So they really are just doing their job, and some of them don't agree with what they're doing. And this police officer clearly did not agree with what she was doing. And somebody, a person in Whole Foods, was rattling at her saying, nobody's wiped down this cart. Like, Whole Foods is now spraying the carts when you come out because they want to have the appearance of being extra, extra clean, even though you go to any other supermarket and they're not doing that. So the police officer was like, I don't work here. I can't really help you with that. And me and my husband kind of slipped in under the radar, not knowing that they had just put in place a new measure beginning on Monday, which stipulated that you have to have masks on. I don't have a mask. I have not tried to buy a mask. I have not went to look for a mask. I have been outside. I have been running. I am not one of those people people that you see dressed up in Muslim medical garb now that is covering every ounce of their faces. I have just been completely myself, and I don't have a mask, so I can't be required to put on something that I don't own. And so my husband and I realized that people were looking at us, but we're like, okay, you're allowed to be scared and wear a mask, but I don't think it's a requirement for every single person to freak out about wearing a mask. And the police officer comes up to us about 5 minutes into us being inside, and she's super frustrated, and she had masks, and she was like, you need to put on these masks. You know, you're lucky we don't take you out of here. And I'm like, what are we even talking about anymore? And apparently, she said that they are now allowed to stipulate that you have to wear a mask or you're not allowed to be inside of the store. And that, to me, I cannot understand how that is constitutional. Somebody explain to me how that is legal. I tell people they cannot buy food at a grocery store unless they have a medical mask on, because 69 people have died in the city. Just so you understand how low that is, DC deaths have been going down every month. We had a certain amount of deaths in January, less deaths in February, and even less deaths in March. So there's no epidemic here. We are not New York City. There is no reason for us to be increasing. There have been no outbreaks in any of the regions that I just told you about, in the Columbia Heights, There's not been an outbreak in all of those bars and down 14th Street, which is where everybody hangs out and where everybody was hanging out. So they've been increasing the measures, and there's no empirical data which explains why they're increasing the measures. They're just deciding on more activities. Tomorrow you could wake up and they could say that it helps to hop on one foot and do the chicken dance, and everyone's going to have to start doing it, even though there's absolutely no reason. Again, there is no outbreak. People are not dying at a higher rate. So what is with this? What is with this policy? What we're seeing happen now is blatant tyranny. It is a quarantine when sick people are made to stay home. It is not a quarantine when healthy people are made to stay home. That is called tyranny. We are not being allowed our right to provide for our families. We are not being allowed our freedoms to go and to provide for our families. If we want to walk into a grocery store, we are being told what we have to wear. This is not normal. This actually makes no sense. And again, as I said, I go to different supermarkets. They're not doing this at all of them. They're not doing this at Harris Teeter on the other side of town. They aren't practicing any of these measures. But police officer said because the mayor put in place the policy that everyone has to wear a mask, they're just doing it. They're now enforcing it. No questions asked by the citizens of why. And we were pretty much like Sweden here in DC in terms of how low the death count has been and how slow the measures are that we've taken. So why are we increasingly allowing more absurd policies when we are seeing that outside of New York City, there just have not been that many deaths? You take out New York City, why doesn't Trump, if we're talking about a solution, why don't we say keep New York City locked down and let the rest of us get back to work? Why don't we say if you're terrified and you don't want people to go back to work, you stay home? How about you stay home? How about you wear a mask? How about you order your food online? Why don't you stay home if you're scared? Why do I have to stay home because you're scared? Oh, don't give me the nonsense about the hospitals being they're overflowed nowhere but in Manhattan, where they have been overflowed for the last 10 years, okay? So, and they've even said that they're seeing less patients. So why don't you stay home? If you're watching this and you're going, we need to be responsible, why don't you stay under your tinfoil hat, okay? Stay in your house, stock up on toilet paper, and let the rest of us get to work? That is my question. I don't know that we're going to get an answer to all of this, but I do know that we're going to start seeing more than protests. We're going to start seeing riots soon if we are not allowed to go back to work and do what we do every single day. This is not the America that I grow up in. This is not the America that I ever want to live in. And neither should you if you really are a person that is pro-freedom.